Imagine lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, your mind spinning with what-ifs. What if I fail? What if I never find love? What if I'm not good enough? You replay conversations, question your choices, and worry about things that haven't even happened. It's exhausting, isn't it? Now imagine this. What if the very act of worrying, the thing you believe keeps you safe and prepared, is the very reason life feels stuck? Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of the 20th century, once said something that sounds deceptively simple: when you stop worrying, everything will fall into place. At first glance, it feels like wishful thinking, a comforting quote meant for coffee mugs or inspirational posters. But beneath those words lies a profound truth about how the human psyche operates, and why letting go might be the most powerful act of control you'll ever take. Jung believed that the unconscious mind, the part of us that runs beneath the surface, is far more intelligent than our conscious thoughts. Worrying, in his view, is the ego's desperate attempt to maintain control over what it cannot understand. We worry because we want certainty, because we fear chaos, because we believe if we think about something long enough, we'll somehow prevent disaster. But Jung would argue that this constant overthinking actually distances us from the deeper intelligence within, the one that already knows what to do if only we'd get out of our own way. Think about how nature works. A tree doesn't worry about growing. The ocean doesn't question its tides. Birds don't obsess over whether they're flying in the right direction. There's a natural rhythm to life, a harmony that doesn't need micromanagement. Jung believed humans are part of that same rhythm, but our modern minds have forgotten how to trust it. Instead, we build walls of worry around ourselves, mistaking control for safety. The irony, of course, is that worry doesn't prevent chaos, it creates it. When you worry, your body tenses, your breathing becomes shallow, your vision narrows. You stop living in the present moment and start fighting imaginary battles. You're no longer responding to life, you're reacting to your own fears. Jung often compared this to living under the shadow, the part of ourselves that hides what we refuse to accept. Worry, he would say, is one of the shadow's favorite disguises. But what happens when you stop worrying? When you stop trying to force every outcome or predict every turn? Something incredible begins to unfold. You start to notice that life doesn't actually fall apart, it falls into place. Opportunities appear when you least expect them. People show up who inspire and support you. Problems that once felt insurmountable begin to dissolve, not because you fought harder, but because you allowed them to. This isn't to say that letting go means being careless or lazy. Jung's philosophy was never about ignoring reality, it was about cooperating with it. When you stop worrying, you start listening to your intuition, your instincts, and that quiet voice inside that always knows what's right. Worrying drowns out that voice, stillness lets it speak. In Jungian psychology, this process of alignment is part of individuation, the journey toward becoming your truest self. Individuation happens when the conscious mind stops resisting the unconscious and begins to work with it. When you stop worrying, you begin to trust the process of life itself. You realize that not every problem needs solving, not every question needs an answer, and not every moment needs your interference. It's a paradox: the less you try to control, the more control you actually gain. Jung would say this is because you've shifted from living through your ego to living through yourself, the deeper, wiser part of you that sees the bigger picture. When you trust that self, everything else starts to align naturally. Of course, letting go of worry is easier said than done. Our world practically teaches us to worry about success, money, aging, relationships, even happiness itself. From an early age, we're conditioned to believe that if we're not constantly striving or planning, we'll fall behind. But Jung would remind us that this constant striving keeps us trapped in a cycle of anxiety. What you resist, he famously said, persists. The more you fight uncertainty, the more uncertain life feels. To truly stop worrying, Jung suggested turning inward, to explore the roots of our fears. What are we really afraid of losing control over? What part of us doesn't trust life to unfold without our constant interference? Often, the answer lies in childhood, when we first learned that love and safety were conditional. Maybe we worried as children because it was how we felt in control in an unpredictable world. But as adults, that same habit no longer protects us, it imprisons us. So, the first step in Jung's message is awareness. Notice your worries without judgment. See them for what they are, the ego's attempt to protect you from imagined pain. Then, gently release them. The world won't collapse, in fact, it might finally start to make sense. Because when you stop worrying, you don't lose control, you find peace. And as Jung knew, peace is what allows everything else to fall into place. If the first step in Jung's philosophy is awareness, recognizing how worry traps us, then the second is trust. Trusting the process of life sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to do, especially in a world that prizes control, logic, and certainty above all else. Yet Carl Jung believed that the moment you stop struggling against life and instead learn to flow with it, something remarkable happens. Life begins to cooperate with you. Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes." When we constantly worry, we're looking outside of ourselves, chasing validation, fearing judgment, and trying to manipulate circumstances to match our expectations. But the truth is, reality rarely fits into our tidy plans. Jung understood that the unconscious mind, the deeper part of us connected to nature, instinct, and intuition, has its own timeline and intelligence. When we let go of the need to control everything, we give that intelligence room to work. It's like planting a seed. You don't dig it up every few hours to check if it's growing. You trust that it will, given time, nourishment, and patience. Worrying about the outcome doesn't make it grow faster, it just exhausts you. The same principle applies to your life. The moment you stop forcing things, you begin to notice that growth happens naturally, quietly, and often in ways you never expected. The human psyche, Jung believed, is designed for self-regulation. Just as the body heals a wound without your conscious involvement, your mind and soul have their own ways of finding balance. But worry interferes with this natural process. It's like constantly poking at an injury, preventing it from healing. When you let go, you allow that inner balance to restore itself. That's why so many people report breakthroughs or moments of clarity only after they've stopped obsessing over a problem. The mind relaxes, and suddenly the answer arrives, not through force, but through surrender. Now, this doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. Jung was clear that action is still essential, but it must come from alignment, not fear. There's a difference between doing something because you're inspired and doing it because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. The first flows naturally, the second drains you. Worry-driven action often leads to burnout, while trust-driven action feels effortless, even joyful. We've all experienced this in small ways. Think of the times you were desperately searching for something, a set of keys, your glasses, and you couldn't find them anywhere. You give up, sit down, and suddenly, there they are, right in front of you. That's the power of release. When you stop grasping so tightly, your perception opens up. Life works the same way. Jung's teachings often revolved around the idea of synchronicity, the mysterious coincidences that seem too meaningful to be random. He believed that when we align with our inner self and stop worrying, we open ourselves to these synchronistic events. Have you ever noticed that when you're calm and present, the right opportunities seem to find you? You meet the right people, receive the right advice, or stumble upon the perfect book at the perfect time. Jung would say that's not luck, it's alignment. When the conscious and unconscious parts of you are in harmony, the outer world begins to reflect that inner order. Of course, learning to trust life doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. Jung never promised a life without pain or uncertainty. In fact, he believed that suffering is an essential part of growth. But he also taught that resisting pain only magnifies it. When you stop worrying and start trusting, you stop asking, why is this happening to me, and begin asking, what is this trying to teach me? That subtle shift in mindset changes everything. It's like being caught in a storm. Worrying won't stop the rain, but it will make you tense, afraid, and miserable. Trusting doesn't mean pretending the storm doesn't exist, it means finding shelter, waiting it out, and knowing that the sun will eventually return. The same goes for life's emotional storms. They pass, but worry tricks you into believing they'll last forever. Many of Jung's patients, especially those in midlife, came to him with the same complaint: I feel lost. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. His response was rarely to give them a plan or advice. Instead, he encouraged them to listen to their dreams, their intuitions, their inner symbols. He believed that the unconscious mind communicates through these subtle signs, guiding us toward wholeness if only we'd learn to pay attention. But you can't hear that guidance if you're too busy worrying. The noise of anxiety drowns out the quiet wisdom of the soul. Jung's approach was radical because it invited people to trust themselves, even when life felt uncertain. He understood that worrying is often a symptom of mistrust, not just in the world, but in our own ability to navigate it. When you stop worrying, you're not ignoring reality, you're acknowledging that you are capable, resilient, and guided by something greater than fear. So much of our stress comes from believing that we're alone in our struggles, that everything depends solely on us. But Jung's insight offers a gentler truth: you are part of something vast, intelligent, and interconnected. When you relax into that truth, you discover that life has been on your side all along. And that's when the magic happens, when things begin to fall into place, not because you forced them to, but because you finally stopped standing in their way. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from surrender, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't demand, doesn't chase. It's the strength that comes when you stop fighting life and allow it to unfold as it's meant to. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He spent his life studying not just the mind, but the soul, the mysterious, unseen force that guides our lives in ways logic can never fully explain. His words, "When you stop worrying, everything will fall into place," aren't a call to passivity, they're an invitation to harmony. In many ways, worrying is an act of resistance. It's like standing in a river and trying to push the current backward. You strain, you panic, you exhaust yourself, and yet the river keeps flowing anyway. Letting go, on the other hand, is like learning to float. You don't control the direction of the water, but you trust that it's carrying you somewhere meaningful. And when you finally stop resisting, you realize the current has been your ally all along. This doesn't mean your life will suddenly be perfect or that problems will vanish overnight. Jung was far too wise to promise anything so naive. What he meant is that when you stop worrying, when you stop clinging to outcomes and start trusting the flow, you stop adding unnecessary suffering to what is. The storms may still come, but they don't drown you anymore. You begin to navigate life with grace instead of fear. One of Jung's greatest insights was that every person carries within them an inner guide, a self that is whole, wise, and connected to something far greater than the conscious mind. When you worry, you separate yourself from that self. You become lost in your thoughts, anxieties, and projections. But when you let go, you reconnect with it. It's like tuning a radio: when the static of fear fades, the signal becomes clear. Suddenly, you just know what to do next, not because you figured it out, but because the answer rises naturally from within. Think back to moments in your life when something just clicked. Maybe it was meeting the right person at the right time, finding a new opportunity when you least expected it, or realizing in hindsight that what once felt like a setback was actually a blessing in disguise. That's what Jung meant by things falling into place. Life has a strange way of aligning itself when you stop trying to control every detail. And yet, letting go isn't about doing nothing, it's about doing what you can, and then releasing the rest. Jung once said, "We are not what happens to us, we are what we choose to become." Worrying keeps you trapped in what might happen, trust allows you to move forward, to participate in life without being ruled by fear. When you act from trust, your energy changes, and so does your reality. You become calmer, more creative, more magnetic. People sense it. Opportunities seem to flow toward you. It's not luck, it's alignment between your inner world and the outer one. To live this way, though, you must make peace with uncertainty. Jung saw uncertainty not as an enemy but as a sacred teacher. He believed that our deepest growth comes from facing the unknown with openness rather than fear. When you stop worrying, you begin to see uncertainty as possibility, a blank canvas instead of a threat. Suddenly, the unknown isn't something to be managed but something to be explored. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming who you truly are by integrating every part of yourself, light and dark, conscious and unconscious. When you stop worrying, you stop denying parts of yourself. You stop pretending to have all the answers. You accept that life is not a puzzle to be solved but a mystery to be lived. In that acceptance, you discover an inner freedom that no external success or security can ever give you. And this freedom changes everything. You begin to live more fully, to love more deeply, to see beauty in the smallest details. You start to realize that joy doesn't come from a life without problems but from a mind at peace within them. The people who seem most at ease in life aren't those who've avoided pain, they're the ones who've learned to stop fighting it. They trust the unfolding. It's worth remembering that Jung's own life was not without turmoil. He experienced breakdowns, doubts, and conflicts that nearly tore him apart. But it was through those experiences that he learned this truth, that life has an uncanny ability to self-correct when we stop interfering. He once described the soul as having its own direction, its own intelligence, and that when we align with it, we find meaning even in chaos. So what does it actually look like to live this way? It means waking up each day with curiosity rather than dread. It means saying, I don't know how this will turn out, but I trust that it's leading somewhere important. It means showing up for your life, fully present, without needing to control every outcome. It means listening to your intuition, taking inspired action, and then letting go of the result. When you live like this, something beautiful happens. Life begins to feel lighter. You start noticing synchronicities, tiny winks from the universe reminding you that you're on the right path. You begin to find joy not in what you achieve, but in simply being. You realize that peace isn't waiting at the end of the road, it's been walking beside you the whole time. In the end, Jung's message isn't about denying reality, it's about embracing it with an open heart. When you stop worrying, you make room for trust. And in that space of trust, everything that's meant for you finds its way to you. Not because you chased it, but because you finally became still enough to receive it. So, stop fighting the current. Stop trying to plan every detail of the river's path. Let go. Float. Trust that you are being carried exactly where you need to be. Because when you do, when you truly stop worrying, everything, in its own mysterious and perfect timing, will fall beautifully into place.